All right, it's Saturday, July 13th, 2024. Bitcoin's at 58,700. And today I just wanted to make a short video on the Bitcoin power law and where I think Bitcoin's headed and why I'm so heavily allocated, almost 100% allocated into Bitcoin. So, anyone who doesn't know about the Bitcoin power law, and I'll bring it up here. It looks like this. It's a power law is basically a chart that compares two unlike things, which if you plot it, it makes a straight line or like a linear relationship. You can see the similarity, um, and that's the case if you take the Bitcoin price versus time and you plot them in the log form, you'll get this straight line. You can see it. Um, and you can use a power law for anything. And I'll give you an example. So here's a graph or a chart that compares the metabolic rate with the body mass of animals. And you can see it. You can see the straight line. And if you look at the top, you see elephant. And if you look at the bottom, you see mouse. And you see all the different animal sizes in between. So when you compare the two and you draw that straight line, you can see there's a relationship, that you can see there's a trend. Believe it or not, Bitcoin has a power law, right? So if we look at that Bitcoin power law, since inception, since the beginning of it, um, and we look at it over time and the price, we can see that linear relationship. Now, I try not to look at, these outliers, these peaks, because those were times when Bitcoin, it spiked because, there was an event, there was a catalyst, there was a reason why uh, Bitcoin, spiked as high as it did. So I try not to look at that top figure so much, that top line. But what I really like to look at is that support line, right? That red one. And it shows us, what is the worst case scenario. And for the most part, as you can see since the beginning of it, it's been pretty accurate. It's been pretty accurate. I believe it failed one time, and that was March of 2020 when the COVID pandemic happened. So unless there's like a global crisis, and even then, I think it dipped below that support line for a couple hours and then it popped right back up. Um, so unless there's a global crisis, this thing is pretty accurate. It's pretty reliable. So it's a good way to gauge where we're at and where Bitcoin is heading. Um, and you can just tell right now that just by looking at you know the graph here, it's showing Bitcoin should be you know somewhere around 80,000, right? So the price that it's at, it's a very good price. It's undervalued. So anyone who's thinking about getting into it, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think you should always be buying Bitcoin. I'm going to be buying now when it's 100,000, 500, and probably when it's a million. But it's definitely undervalued when you look at it through the power law, right? But the reason I want you to take a look at this is because in 4 years, say, right, in 2028, right? So we'll pop it up a little more here. So in 2028, 4 years now, that support is 100,000. That's the bottom. That is a bear case. That is the worst case scenario. 2028, 4 years from now, it's going to be at least a minimum of 100,000. That's a pretty good return. I mean, that's a pretty incredible return. If you remember, when we talked about it in one of my last videos, and here's a chart of it, we can see Bitcoin's annual returns, right? On average, it does about 150% annually. And we talked about how, that's going to change. I mean, it's not going to change drastically, but it is going to change because you're not going to see these crazy 50, 200% spikes like you did in the beginning, right? Like it's going to start to tame a little. It's not going to become as volatile. But you can see the pattern, right? You can see the green, green, red, green, 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 red, right? 3 years green, 1 year red, 3 years green, 1 year red. So you can see that we're right on track. Now we're not at 68,000 like when this was posted. We're at 58,000 now, obviously, but I mean, we're still up on the year. So this second year at 2024, we're still green. 2025, we should still be green, right? So we're right on track with this power law, right? And you can see where we're at. We're right on track with it. But in 4 years, for it to be at least 100,000, that's pretty incredible, considering that, like, if you were to invest in a stock market index fund, right, like an S&P 500 index fund, a total stock market index fund, on average, you're going to get a 10% return. Some people might argue that it's less than that. It's 8%, 9%, but on average, you're going to get like a 10% return annually per year, right? So it'll take, if you put 100,000 in, it'll take 7 years for that to double. Roughly 7 years, right? This is showing that we're at 58K, and in 4 years we're going to be over 100K. You're gonna double in a worst case scenario in 4 years, not 7, in 4. That's a pretty incredible return. So that, I just wanted to show that, like, why I'm so heavily into Bitcoin, why I'm almost 100% in, is just because I mean, when you look at this chart like this, it's hard to ignore, and it's been pretty reliable to the fact that we can look at that fair price value or that support line and get an estimate of where we should be at. So that's it. I'll go ahead and keep you guys updated. Otherwise, take care.